Okay, let me ask you this. The people that you met, all these great comics that you met when they were just starting out, from firsthand experience, I know some very funny, successful people who suffer a little from depression. And most writers I know are not happy, writers and comics, especially if they write
Comics
funny.
no, comedy comes from pain.
Yes.
And humiliation and anger. And with the exception of Jay Leno, I don't think I've ever met a comic who was not angry and unhappy and in pain.
Okay, so talk to me a little bit about that. Robin Williams just passed, suicide, it seems. So can you share a little bit about that? I know you met him once.
Well, I'm more than once. When after I started in New York, I went back to Nebraska because it was too damn cold in New York and I was broke. And then I came to LA for the first time with a friend of mine who was coming out here for like 2 weeks for some convention, audio engineers convention. He was the guy who did all my 8-track tape player hookups in my store because we dealt in tapes and records and comic books. And at the end of 2 weeks, he went back to Nebraska and I stayed out here because I had discovered the Comedy Store. And they had open mic nights too. And so, I started just plugging away at the Comedy Store. Now, in those days, and this was 1977, there were really only 2 comedy clubs, the Comedy Store and the Improv. And there was no real way to make a living. There was no road or anything. But there was a hierarchy of comics, and the big shots at the Comedy Store, who were still completely unknown outside the Comedy Store, were David Letterman and Jay Leno, Robin Williams, and Richard Lewis, and Michael Keaton was doing stand-up in those days. I mean, an incredible number of very, very funny people.
You just listed a bunch of my favorites, of course, yeah.
And so, I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, okay, it's going to be a long time before there's any room for me at the top of the hierarchy. But I knew Robin casually, just to say hi to, hang out. And once I started writing, being paid to write, which is a story I will tell you how that came about, I basically stopped hanging out at the store, and this was 1978, and all of a sudden Mork and Mindy hit. I mean, just exploded. And Robin Williams goes from being unknown to being, on every magazine
superstar,
cover.
Right.
And one night around that time, I found myself at the Ginger Man in Beverly Hills. It's a restaurant that was owned by Carol O'Connor. And I have no recollection of why I was there, but it was relatively late. I mean, I was probably there trying to pick up women. And Robin Williams is there sitting at the bar just drinking alone, And so, he hadn't reached the level of fame where he was mobbed or everybody recognized him yet. He was a star of a hit TV show. And, nationally he was getting a lot of publicity, but, in town he was another, successful actor. And so I said hi to him, and I said, congratulations, man. This show is blowing up. It's fantastic. And he was not happy at all. He said to me, man, it's insane, man. I don't know how I'm going to handle it. And he just looked miserable. And it was at that moment that I gave up wanting to be famous.